History Center. It is March 7th, 2005, 10:45 a.m., and this is part of the Atlanta's Unspoken Past. Bill, if you don't mind beginning with biographical information.
Okay, because you've mentioned my name, I'm William. Formerly, my name is William J. Whittaker III. I was born Willie Whittaker, and growing up, I always asked my mom, well, periodically I would ask her, Mom, why, did you name me Willie and not William? She said, because that was your daddy's name. So when I got older, and I sort of changed it to William. But I was born February 3rd, 1942, in Montgomery, Alabama. I went to elementary school at Trinity Lutheran School. It was a parochial school, Lutheran school, for the first 4 years. Then the 5th year, I went to a public school. It was called Lovelace, and again in Montgomery. And the story was that we had a family conference, and my parents said, things economically are a little tight this year, so we will not be able to send you to the parochial school. So we're going to send you for just 1 year to this public school, and I thought it was cool. But so we went there for that 1 year and returned. I did. We returned to Luther through the 8th grade. And high school, I went to a Catholic high school, St. Jude's High School. Again, we're talking. This all. I mean, in a period where it was. These are segregated schools. But when I went into high school, we did have nuns and what they refer to as lay teachers, which were white instructors, with the nuns and the priests. So I graduated in 1959 from St. Jude's. Then I had a year at Alabama State College at the time, which is now Alabama State University. I completed that year, and I sort of was at a crossroads because I wanted to, well, I wasn't sure I wanted to continue school. I wanted to continue school, it's just that I didn't want to continue at Alabama State. I thought, here, born and raised in the city, I wanted to sort of, move to a different area or have a different experience. So I was speaking to my uncle, my mom's brother, and he said, well, why not consider the military? That way you can go in, get your education, see the world, travel, so forth and so on. And I thought about it, and I broached that subject with my father, and he wasn't too happy at all with that. So we had sort of a little sort of a powwow there. But I won, and I went into the military. So I went to the Air Force in 1960, and I spent 8 years in the military. There was quite an experience for me. I was just one of these kids that had a happy childhood and all that, but again, I grew in pure segregation, and for me, it was a time that I wasn't, I was trying to make sense of all of this, and I just felt that, maybe we haven't done a good job of letting the so-called white man know who we really are. And I'm not ready to accept that all white persons are mean or angry or, want to lynch me or my family and so on and so on. So when I went to the military, that gave me an opportunity to really sort of do that, my own investigative work or in my own sort of educational sort of work. And that's what occurred during that period, that I really got to meet up close other ethnic groups. They got to see me up close. They got to see, or dispel some of the myths they had about black persons. Well, they had some strange things going on back in the day. I mean, that we may have had tails, we did this, and of course, some other myths in terms of our physical attributes that we, all black men have. Well, anyway, some of those things were dispelled, and it just was a coming out for me, an educational process. That was incredible for me. I made some really good friends, and just shaped my attitude in terms of racism and all that's connected with that. So after 8 years in the military, I got out, and at this point in time, my family had moved from Alabama to Connecticut, Fairfield, Connecticut, and when I got out, I joined them there. Of course, at this point in time, too, I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do about the rest of my life? Because I hadn't finished my education, which I thought I would have been able to do in the military. What happened? I did take some college courses. I probably gained another maybe year, but I didn't have a degree, and so I said, okay. I've got to work on that. But in the meantime, I took some part-time jobs. And then during that period, for maybe a couple of years after I got out, I met Matthew, my partner. And maybe if I back up a little bit, immediately after I got out of the military and went into to work, one place was was a military hospital, not a military hospital, but a psychiatric hospital down in Connecticut. I sort of discovered, or it was made a little bit more clear, in terms of my sexuality, where I was sort of headed, or what I was experiencing, and again at this point I'm in my late 20s, and I had a sexual encounter with one of the young men where I was at a place where I worked at a psychiatric hospital, and that's when it's sort of, this is it, in terms of my sexuality. I had to really deal with that and acknowledge, okay, this is who I am. And it wasn't like a frightening experience. It was interesting. It was exciting. But I also knew that if this is who I am not going to be one of those that's going to be going here, there, and elsewhere for my sort of sexual pleasures or experiences. That's not for me. So that occurred then, and so I just went on about my life. When and again during this period, as I'm doing the part-time jobs, I'm also taking some courses. And I went to Connecticut, it's Connecticut State College, and that's where I was introduced to some students there that were special educators, and they just embraced me. They had a very good sort of rapport and I guess an ad program, because I was just really moved and impressed with what they presented to me and how they sort of accepted me and just said, look, if you're looking for a career, then you should consider going to special education. So that's where I got my sort of first start, or my interest was sort of peaked there at Connecticut State. Again, I was, still doing part-time kind of work, and finally I got a position with household finance, and as a management trainee position. And also during this period, well, now let's see, I'm now up to about 1973. I had met some friends, of course, in Connecticut, some gay friends, and one was a lesbian by the name of Alice Fentress, and she really had another person in mind for me, a minister friend of hers. And she had him come over, and there were some other persons invited to her home for this sort of a dinner party, and Matthew was among those. And we had a pleasant evening and so forth. During the evening, Matthew approached me. We started talking, and it just had a nice conversation. And before the end of the evening, he invited me to come over, and we specified at the time to watch a Mary Tyler Moore show. And so, that was, didn't realize, but that was the beginning of relationship. The next sort of date we had was at Yale University. It was a social, a gay social, and we had a wonderful, wonderful time. And oh yeah, I think this social had to do it was a Halloween party, and we had probably seen each other at least maybe 2 or 3 times at this point. This is in November. I'm sorry, it's in October of '73. And because we got together and consulted in terms of our outfits. And I thought, well, since he's white and I'm black, what more appropriate way to sort of really sort of emphasize this, or in case people didn't recognize it when they saw us, was to dress as Salt and Pepper Shakers. So we got our boxes, and of course, and painted our boxes and put, of course, the S and on the front of one and a P, and on the other. And we got these little skull caps. They were like knitted skull caps, to sort of indicate, the little holes in the shaker. And we went to the social. We both just had such a laugh, and it was just such a funny thing because people looked at us, and they saw the S and the P. They tried their best to make it other than just salt and pepper, Sato, but what the P stands for, and it was just the funniest thing. We both got such a laugh out of that thing, but there were a few that really realized exactly, that we was ever at salt and pepper. So since we were not sure of our official date, we have selected October the 1st as our date that we celebrate our anniversary. So October the 1st is that date. And we tell people when they ask us, where did you meet? It's impressive to say, well, we met at Yale University. And then we have to, of course, break down and tell the rest of the story. But anyway, so we realized that we were really interested in each other, and shortly thereafter, Matthew he worked for a publishing firm, and they were, I guess, phasing down, and he got a position in New York, and he decided to take that position, and of course, we talked about that, and talked about our relationship, how we felt about each other, and if and how we were going to handle it. And since I had, like I said, been with Household Finance now maybe a year, they had a position in New York, so it was easy for me to make that transfer. And so I did. We set up housekeeping in Manhattan, which was just wonderful. And we were there for a while, and then and it was just great, because being in New York at that time, well, because being in New York is exciting, but again, during that period, well, there are all kinds of issues and concerns. First of all, here we are, an interracial couple. But being in a city like New York, people are doing all kinds of things. They're so into their own things that most of them they weren't paying too much attention to you. If so, it was no big deal. And basically, we had some of my favorite bars we would go to on weekends, and dance party. We started to make friends there, and it was just a wonderful and exciting period. But again, in terms of, for me, my work and where I was feeling about not having completed my education, because Matthew already had a master's degree, and I wanted to make sure I was pulling my weight. So it got to a point at Household that first of all, I did not think this was the place for me, and that's a little bit. But I've got to, I want to at least hang in until I at least become manager or make manager, and then make a decision. Well, it didn't happen. A couple of incidents occurred. My manager didn't back me up on some loans I had made. That is, he had encouraged me or insisted I make them, and after I had done so, didn't support me in terms of explaining to upper management when they reviewed, my files and so forth. I had to make a decision, and so I had come home that weekend, and before I realized I had written a letter of resignation and submitted it. And I came back and told Matthew, and he said, well, we'll make it. We sat down, we discussed how we were going to do it. He said, really what you need to do is go back to school. I said, now, we've been in New York long enough now. This is 74. We've been a year that you can, you've established residency. You have your military. I forget what the term is now, but yeah, GIB, basically what you used to call it back then, where I could get some money toward my education. So he said, that's what you need to do. And I said, but look, I had brought along some bills that I had incurred. And if I may back up a little bit, my parents, after 27 years of marriage, had divorced. And so I felt, as the oldest son, oldest child, that I should help my mom, where as best I could. So I made sure she was, set up in terms of apartment, because we moved from Fairfield to New Haven, and got us up an apartment, and so and just getting her set up and taking care of some things. I had incurred some debt to the tune of something like $5,000, I think, at that point, which was a whole lot of money. So I said, okay, Matthew, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a part-time job, and I will take care of these bills. And, so we worked all that out in terms of the financial situation. And he was so supportive. And I said, look, I'm not too proud to go down and get food stamps. I did that. I wrote all my creditors to say, look, you know, I can only afford to pay you X amount a week, but I will consistently do that until, you know, these bills are taken care of. And that happened. One of my part-time jobs was working for the Museum of Natural History in New York, which I loved. And I had to do it on weekends and so forth, but no way. I did that. We had a neat little apartment in Manhattan. We enjoyed going to the park, making little picnic lunches and that kind of stuff, shopping on Saturdays, going down, you know, we lived at West 91st. West 91st and Columbus, I think. And a beautiful apartment, but it got to a point where, you know, we were being broken into, you know, our apartment was being broken into. After about the third attempt, and one night I was up trying to prepare, you know, studying, I said, this is it. We've got to think with it. So we left Manhattan, moved to Brooklyn. And we were in Brooklyn for a year or so. Then we ended up in Queens, where we ended up buying a house. I'm kind of rushing that a little bit, part of it. But that's what happened. I mean, we ended up spending 7 years in Queens, so a total of 10 years in New York. But if I may back up just a little bit in terms of my education, well, as I said, I enrolled at City College, and that's where I got my undergrad degree, and at the time they called it mental retardation. Wonderful professors, wonderful experiences at City College. Got through that program, and then went right on to get my master's degree in learning disabilities at Fordham. And then in the interim period, I had gotten a job at the Jewish Guild for the Blind as, ended up being a rehabilitation counselor, a teacher, they call it. They're working with blind and visually impaired adults. That was a wonderful experience for me. Again, they were very, very supportive. And then I got an opportunity to get a second master's in vision. I didn't, well, at the time I didn't really have to, because I had taken the courses that I needed to in order to learn Braille, which I needed to know. I had done that, but this, through Teachers College, they were soliciting minority students. And again, you know, this sort of voice said, look, you need to sort of consider that. And I looked into it, and it was just one of those situations that I couldn't sort of afford to not take a part in. And I did. Again, my supervisors were extremely supportive. They allowed me to work 3/4 time, and I was able to go to school. So I finished that program, and I think I finished in '83, if I got that. I believe that's correct. And it wasn't a year. It was a year after that we ended up leaving New York and moving here to Atlanta.
Why did you move to Atlanta?
Matthew was experiencing some health issues relative to the cold. He's getting, you know, bursitis and just having some uncomfortable situations there. So much so that we started talking about looking at some other areas, other places. But the funny part is that first of all, maybe we should look on Long Island, you know, just moving, you know, and I don't know how that's going to happen, but we thought, well, let's think about it. Well, when we started looking to properties, you know, they want to give you, what they consider water, sometimes just sort of an overrated sewers. sort of. And they would charge an arm and a leg for that, so we said, no, we don't think this is going to work for us. So, you know, we were sitting, I remember this very well, we were sitting out on our porch, it wasn't really a porch, but a little outside area of our place in Queens. And we lived in attached housing, you know. And a beautiful neighborhood. And we were talking this one Sunday afternoon, and so Mike said, well, what do you think about us moving to Georgia? I said, to Georgia? He said, to Atlanta. I said, to Atlanta? Well, you know. And he said, well, you know, I had to go on there a couple of times on business trips. He had, I mean, gone a couple of times. And he said, I think that might be an interesting, you know, city for us. Again, we both wanted to be in areas that, as best we could get it, a mixture of both black and white, you know, interacting and working together. And so Matthew observed that, and then I had read, you know, some information about Atlanta, and of course had an opportunity to come down after we had talked about it for myself to attend a conference, and I was really just impressed with what I had seen in terms of, again, blacks being in power and very involved in the community in a positive way. For me, it was very interesting and exciting, and I thought, oh yeah, I think, you know, we could be happy here. So we came, you know, we sat down again and decided how we were going to go about it. Since I, you know, was in the teaching field, I sort of felt that I probably could, you know, with no problem, you know, getting a teaching position. So we just sort of put it all in motion. Of course, you know, we had to put our house on the market and all that, and we both being believers, we felt that is, you know, we had a faith, and we just said, look, you know, if it's meant to happen, then it should flow relatively easily. And sure enough, we put a house on the market. It sold within a month. I had already sent out resumes and gotten applications and filled those out and submitted them to about maybe 4 systems here in Atlanta, and finally received one from Atlanta Public Schools. And so I said, okay, fine. And because my intent, well, actually, I had not I don't think I had received it prior to my moving. And we moved here in February of '84. And I think the week that we were moving is when I received notice from Atlanta that they, you know, had a position, or at least wanted to interview me. Separate interview. Because I'm thinking, look, I'll move down, you know, I like to give myself, you know, at least a month, 6 weeks to just sort of get the, well, you know, when I got that from Atlanta, they wanted me to start like within 2 weeks. So I did, and I for that first month, I stayed in Grant Park, and it was a house that this professor I had met at a conference in New York. You know, we made friends, and he told me that, you know, if ever, you know, I was in Atlanta to come and to see him, and so I did, and he had this house and rented me a space, you know, a room. So I was there for a month, and then I found a house on Marbutt Avenue in Southeast Atlanta. So when Matthew joined me about 3 months later, I think he came in April of that year, that's when we lived on Marbutt until July. And we found a house, found the house on Lyndhurst where we were living. So that's what brought us here, you know, just again, the climate, of course, was significant, for, you know, for for health reasons. And being a Southern person, it was one for me. But I remember in our discussions, I said, "Look, Matthew, are you sure this is something you want to do? Being a Yankee." He said, "Yeah, it's gonna be fine." So we started process and we moved down, and so as I said, he remained in New York. Remained in New York, and in fact, was staying with some very close friends of ours that are now they're like family to us. They have since moved down here as well. The whole kit and caboodle. I mean, we're talking about a huge family of people. But anyway, if you get to know my friend, refer to him as my partner, he make a decision, but he's not always so certain. It takes a little while for it to sink in. So anyway, after we made the move, and he's thinking, now, is this really the move that we should be making? So we had a discussion. He comes down just for a little visit after about a month, and he's saying, we're having a glass of wine. He's saying, well, I think we should reconsider. I said, Matthew, I love you dearly, and you know that. But if you think that after we were going through all this and made the decision, sold our home, that I am going to turn back and go back to New York, you are sadly mistaken. So I'll continue to love you, but if that's what you want to do to stay there, that's the decision you have to make. But I am not going back. So we talk about that even today, and we laugh about it. Anyway, he of course it obviously settled for him, and he's very, very happy here. But that's just something that when we talk among our friends and all, and we talk about relationship issues and how you resolve situations. We'll bring that up. We haven't ever had a major issue or problem that we were not able to sit down, talk about it, and resolve it. We have just been blessed to have the kind of relationship that we have, and that is still vibrant, and it is still strong and healthy, and I just attribute a lot of that to how we have just learned to respect each other. That's something we did early on. We learned how to communicate effectively with each other. And not to say we haven't had some bumps along the road, but they weren't so serious to the point that we said, okay, I'm out of here, or we said, yeah, I'm out of here. It just never ever got to that. We never got to that part. We didn't get close to that. So where am I? Yes, am I going now? Okay.
Well, actually,
I'm hard to back up.
no, I would like to go back and ask
Sure.
some questions. One about maybe your family and your relationship with Matthew, and when did or do they?
Mm-hmm.
Are they aware of
Well,
the relationship?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Let's start with our mothers. And by the way, both of our parents, mom and mothers and fathers are deceased. But I'm going to start with our mothers because they were significant, instrumental, fantastic people. My mom loved all of her children dearly. My mom was a very young mother. I was born when I think she was 15. So we had a very close relationship, more ways than one. But she loved us so much that, that was nothing that she would not allow anyone else to say anything negatively about her children. And not that she spoiled us and thought we were, put us up on pedestals or whatever. It's just that she was just one of those people that loved her children, loved her family, and just did what she knew she needed to do in order to raise us, bring us up, and to do, provide as best she could, which she did, an exceptional job. Well, I can remember so well that I had come to her. I have not, in fact, no, I hadn't met Matthew at this point, and we were, in New Haven, and I just felt the need to come out to her. And bear in mind, at this point, again, I'm in my close to probably 30, probably 28, 29, and I said, Mom, I have to share this with you, and I said, I'm gay. And she just smiled, looked down at me and smiled. She said, son, she said, I know, and so to all of your sisters. And then we laughed about it. But anyway, when I met Matthew, again, she just took him as another son. Just as if she was out shopping and she saw this son that she went. But that's how it was with her. My father, on the other hand, and after, and I used to be a little hard on him, but I had to realize where he had come from and what he had to deal with. Here we are again he's born and raised in a racist society and segregation and all that sort of stuff, and he had a tough road to travel. He was an insurance man. Proud that he was working in the cleaning business, but when he was an insurance person, he had to travel into the country byways and roads of Alabama, and encountered some horrible things at times. Particularly when he would go in, because he liked to have a little drink here and there, and he would go into some of these places that maybe just some of those little, country white persons may have, had the little bars around where, and had little comments to make, and at one point I remember they said something to him, and he tried to walk away, and he ended up being a little mini sort of hustle tussle. But anyway, he dealt with a heck of a lot more than I had to deal with or experience. So he didn't have a great love for my white brothers and sisters. So when I, of course, walk in here and I'm, and I had given a little taste of where I was, of my interest in getting to know, the other sides we refer to some. Because there's one when I was at this worked at this hospital I made reference to. There was this, I had a group of white friends, and one in particular was this very beautiful girl, young woman at the time, who said, she wanted to come up and meet my family, and I did. And when he walked in from work and saw me there with her, of course he was wondering, what's going on here. So, but he was cool about that, and we introduced her to her, Also we went out on our little, on our date and came back and so forth. But moving ahead now, when he met Matthew, he, at this point, wanted to be a little sarcastic, of course, knowing, where we were coming from at this point in time. And I told him, I looked at it, I said, Matthew's coming up. In fact, my brother, Gerald, was getting married. And in fact, it was his reception that Mom was having at the house, or one of the pre-reception gatherings. So I said, Dad, I've invited Matthew, and I want you to be on your best behavior. He mumbled and grumbled, so I said, look, I'm telling you right now, if I hear or if I smell anything that's not right in terms of your behavior toward him, you're going to get it from me. And you hear this, I'm the son talking this way to my dad. I said, but look, and he knew I was serious. I said, I'm an adult now. I know you have some issues and some concerns. I said, but look, this is a person that I love and I care about. Mom certainly loves him and so forth and so on. I said, now, I can't force you to love him or like him, but I'm asking you to be respectful and not act fool. I was putting it mildly. So sure enough, maybe he conducted himself relatively well, and it just made the best of it. Though it wasn't, I guess easy for him. But my father ended up passing away, maybe a year or so after that. So it's, but my other sisters and brothers, I have a young. Let me just say, in terms of my family members, I mentioned my brother Gerald. He is, I think, you're like 10 years younger than I am. I had a sister who's now deceased. She was 2 years younger, Eleanor. And I have a sister that's 6 years younger, Deborah, and she lives in New York with one of her 2 daughters. And then I have a sister that's 20 years younger than I am, lives in Connecticut with her husband and 2 sons. Now, one of the sons happens to be now a sophomore at Morehouse, and the youngest one will be graduating high school this year, and there's a couple of colleges he's looking at, universities. I'm not sure exactly which one he's going to. But anyway, now getting back to the family now with Matthew, and this was interesting. I mentioned about his mom, the same wonderful, wonderful, beautiful person, all accepting, and just dealt with us whenever we would visit Connecticut. We would stay with her, and initially Matthew would stay in this old room. We were up on the 2nd floor, and I would stay in the guest room that was across the way. Of course, we always end up going back and forth. Of course, no one's supposed to have known that, but one morning she did come in to tell us the breakfast was ready, and sort of discovered us there. But she was getting very cool about it. She just closed the door and went back downstairs. Nothing else was ever said. But she didn't have a problem. But his father, again, an interesting man. He is an ex-military person, and definitely had those feelings that the races shouldn't necessarily be all that I guess commingling, interaction, whatever, kind of do your own thing, but we shouldn't, be getting too sort of close. And he made references sometimes to Matthew, even not in my presence. And he said, well, Dad, about black persons in general. So, and Matthew would ask him, in fact, he shared this with me. He said, Dad, why is it that you say some of these things about black people, knowing, realizing Bill is black, and you've met him, you've dined with him, you've had him in your home, blah, blah. He said, but Bill is different. Which is, and if you dealt with any blacks, you hear or talk among, sometimes you hear people say that. Even I've, heard it in other ways. In reference even to the white person, say, well, yeah, I can't stand out, but Mom, but such is white. Yeah, but she or he is not like the others, kind of thing. So people make some of those distinctions, those differences, or try to, I guess, explain that. But anyway, that was his dad. I was different. So I had a chance to really get to know him before he passed. I remember. I'll always remember this. When we would visit, it's always appeared that I had work to do. So this one day weekend, I said, look, I had to bring my stuff with me. So I had my Braille writer and my paper and my lesson plans and stuff. So Matthew and his mom had gone into church, and I said, look, I'm not going to go, with you guys this time because I really got all this work. I got to get out and get my lessons ready, So I was upstairs brailing away, and at this point, his dad was really suffering from emphysema, and so he was an electrician, and again, one of those kind of parents who are fathers that was handed around the house to do stuff, and every summer he would either ask one of his other sons or his brother or son-in-law at the time would come help him put up what they call a sun house. I think they call it a sun house, or it was one of those portable kinds of things where, you could construct in your backyard and all screen houses they call it, and can go in, and relax during the summer months. Well, he hadn't gotten it up to his satisfaction on this weekend. So I was up there, and he called me. He said, "Bill?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Don't you think it's time to take a break?" And I said, "Oh, you're right." I said, "I've been working up here for about an hour and a half." So I come down, we chit-chat for maybe 10, 15 minutes and say, I was wondering if you could help me do something. I said, "Well, sure, So I went out there, and sure enough, he wanted me to help him to do, because he couldn't, something he just couldn't do after he'd do a little bit, and then he would, get tired and all that. So I helped, or, finished constructing that screen house for him. And during that period, we really got to talk and interact, and I could see, it was for him, he needed to, it was our time together, and I'm so glad we had that time to share. But again, a good man, and this is all part of my the learning process for me, looking at the races. I said, and I always felt this, I said, we have not had the opportunity to really communicate. Not enough opportunities to do that. I think that is, without any pressure, we were presented with opportunities to come.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me just pause here.
Sure.
Okay, we're continuing our interview with Bill, and you were commenting on the opportunity that was presented when you were...
Right. I was speaking in regards to races being given opportunities to come together. I think if we had more opportunities to do that in a comfortable setting, we would get a better understanding of each other. We would, in a comfortable situation, you're going to share, you're going to exchange ideas, and come to realize that we are more alike than we are different. If we can get beyond just the color of our skins and see inside who we are, it'll just be it'll be a revelation for both. I firmly believe this. For me, I just made it my business to do that, and I think I made reference to that when I was speaking about our military experiences. For me, that was my time to just get to know who my comrades were. I mean, who my fellow mates were, who those persons were that I'm, sharing space with. We are sleeping in the same areas. We're eating, dining together. We're going out on our little maneuvers and, doing our daily activities and jobs together, And then that those close confines, you are going to be sharing and talking about all kinds of things. And I remember I was in security police, and I would sometimes have those the job entailed being on a tarmac guarding this aircraft, during the midnight hours, and fellows would come out, person would come out to relieve me or to bring coffee or tea or some kind of refreshment. You're sitting there in this one little vehicle in your truck, and you're just gonna be talking about things and sharing, talking about family, sharing ideas, and so you really get to know who this person is, and you forget what color he is, he is, or in this case you were just working with men. And I remember the times that this one young man that he and I were working together, and from the moment he walked into that vehicle and just started, after he brought my coffee on and we started talking, he just started telling me stories about his life and his family, and then jokes, and I just remember, I said, I must have laughed and just as a joyful time for about some couple of hours or so, not even thinking about, here we are from totally two different worlds in a way, but we're really not that far apart. So that was sort of my first experiences with this whole thing and issues and problems and concerns that we have because we are different ethnic backgrounds and so forth. That was the beginning of the learning for me. And then as I matured, and of course being in a interracial relationship, it's interesting in more ways than one. I mean, and whether you want to or not, you can't help but be exposed to some things that you may not have thought you would be exposed to before. Some of the looks you go out and get, some of the reactions that people will give you. It's just very, very interesting. And Matthew and I have just used it to our advantage in many, many ways. I mean, for instance, there were times early in our relationship we would go to a hotel like on a vacation. And we walk in, and they would always look at him first. That to ask the question, or where are you here to stay, or whatever the case is. And there've been times when we really say, oh yeah, and my and my sort of how do you refer to it as his, not his helper, but his hired hand, whatever, would take the bags up to the room, and I just would give them those looks, and we just laugh. But we make a lot of times we just make a joke out of it. But again, it's just interesting how, in terms of, and it was just you could not boil it down in any other way but say this is just out racism. I was, it was Matthew, the white one, who that they were going to do business with, particularly like if there was a white person on the other side. That it could be out eating, just the two of us. Who do you think they bring the check to when we were out together? Because, it's the white man that's going to have the money and probably access to funds, not the black one. One incident that occurred when we were in New York, that, we both just reacted in such a way, but tried to be professional and tried to be, decent about it. We had been given a coupon booklet as a gift from some friends. And so we just made our business to go and just check these restaurants out. Well, one of them we had gone in, we thought this was kind of interesting. And I don't want to again be, in essence, sort of speak negative about any group of persons, but we had pretty much determined that this was, as we referred to it at the time, mafioso kind of establishment. So here, the two of us walk up there, and, waiting to be seated, and the maitre d' just said, I'm sorry. She said, we can't sit you because there's a private party going on. There wasn't a single person in that restaurant at the time. So I don't know if there was a party coming in, they had rented the whole restaurant. They said, but no, we can't. I said, well, thank you, and we left. Well, on another weekend, we are going to one. It's on the east side of New York. Very posh sort of place. We are going in, and they seated us sort of like in the back. And it was fine, it was cozy. That was the problem. We had a fine meal. So, and Matthew had given me the coupon, and because he always feel for me, I'm good at keeping things safe, and not misplacing. So I had the thing in front of me, coupon. So when the waiter had come over, I proceeded to, with the check, and I said, all right, I want to give it. Oh, we do not accept food stamps. I said, beg your pardon? We don't accept food. I said, would you take a look at this? And didn't apologize, and so of course Matthew was livid at this point. He said, excuse me, I'm going to deal with this. So of course he called for the manager. To make a long story short, they did not want to really come out and say, look, we are sorry, we apologize for this situation, da da da. They went on to give all kinds of excuses as to why the waiter did what he did and handled it the way he handled it. He said, oh, he has worked an extra shift and he's married with 1,000 kids and all these other kinds of silly, ridiculous reasonings as to why he behaved the way he did. But we ended up writing a letter, again, from a letter to them. But again, just some situations that we have experienced. And you think, I mean, and it's not like that, not so pervasive today, but there's still some little things that one observes. And we both, we all have said this stuff. So and for me, I mean, I tell people, I mean, I can smell it. And I try to handle it in a way that is not offensive or whatever, but just to call it out if I observe it, or react in a way to let it be known, this is unacceptable. But again, it's very, very limited. I'm limited in terms of my observance of it. And again, just to realize here, even though we're living, this is 2005 now, and living in a wonderful city like Atlanta, you get beyond it, and you can observe some things. But again, not so pervasive, but you still can, Like I look around again, I'm still surprised. We go to beaches, we go to places, and you swear, you're back in the 1940s or 30s or something, but in terms of, well, again, you don't see many persons of color, in the areas or whatever, and I'm not blaming that on anybody in particular, because I know, again, we talk about racism and so forth, and Reverend Lowry has often said that the most racist hours are on Sundays, like during when services are going on, because we all are in our segregated places. And what it is, I mean, from my perspective, is that people are, in places where they feel most comfortable. And I don't fault anybody with that, But if I may just say, in regards to that, being a member of St. Mark United Methodist Church, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with St. Mark, located on Peachtree and 5th, but it's a very inclusive church, very diverse church, and it's all inclusive. I'm not going to go to say it's gay friendly. It's beyond that. It's just an inclusive church that no one is denied. No, you're just all a part of it, and we're like little international area. We look at the families and the children, all this that make up this church. It's incredible. But and then again, we don't. There's not a significant number of blacks in that church. And I think the problem again with it is that we're not doing all that we can do if we really want to attract others. And again, I'm not to say we want to bring them, say, look, you've got to come to this church, but again, create situations that will draw people in, that they will want to come and be a part. And then you just start by just sharing some things. Maybe do a Habitat House together, which Cascade did with one other. Cascade United Methodist Church did with another over the white church, and when we were members of that church. But there's some projects, some things that can be done, working in the community, and that's something that we do at St. Mark, where we do things that so we do a lot of work with the homeless, and we other groups where we can bring in some other churches, to programs to assist work along with, and that way you get an opportunity again, in this relaxed atmosphere, you can exchange ideas and talk. Like, for instance, one of our programs we do with the homeless, we call it the Breakfast Club, and we feed up to 60 homeless persons per Saturday, each Saturday of the month. And Matthew and I, our couples class at St. Mark, we do the third Saturday. And one of our friends happened to be a Jewish person, in fact, a former boss of Matthew and David Mayer, and been friends of ours for years and years. And we knew him and his first wife and his children, were babies, and now, his one son is a freshman in a university here in the city. But Dave, we told Dave about our program, and he said, look, I love to come. Dave comes, brings his daughter, one of the daughters, Melissa. She brings her friend. He's brought his new wife down. That's what it's about. We talk and we interact, and we we get to know even more about each other. But it's situations like that we will be able to bridge that gap. Where people will start to break down some of these prejudices, some of these myths, some of these, feelings that they have learned or heard about other groups. That is, this is not, these people aren't so this and other thing. Even as it relates to gay, lesbian, transgender persons and so forth. I mean, some of the things that's happening today, and again in terms of our churches, is abysmal. It is absolutely absurd. You're going to take a group of folk and put them classify them as lower than low, or that they're nothing but sinners, going straight to hell, and then if you are believe in all kinds of ridiculous, and trying to claim what the Bible says about this and about that. And even in our own church, the United Methodist Church, we're struggling with some issues as relates to homosexuality in our own church at St. Mark. With the United Methodism, there's one phrase that's in our discipline. I even wrote it down here. It's a whole little paragraph thing, but one of the lines that says, although we do not condone the practice of homosexuality and consider the practice incompatible with Christian teaching, we we affirm that God's grace is available to all. So, and they say, I was looking at the nice little language up there about how we are to be prayed for and worked with and included, but we don't condone the practice. The practice of homosexuality. So do heterosexual practice is the thing is practicing heterosexuality. But so there are issues that we are certainly having to deal with, and in time, and it's going to happen, I believe, through the children. That some of those probably St. Mark and some children, some of the other institutions and churches and synagogues will make the difference. I'm not sure if I'll be able to see that in my lifetime, but I believe it's going to happen. Where they're going to take that phrase out, first of all, because this whole thing is done by through conferences over the years. This discipline was written, put together over 200 years of conferences and so forth and so on. So at some point in time, it's going to happen. They're going to extract that because and again, I'm no biblical scholar, but I have read the Bible. I do know. I have not seen, and I'm sure other folk too have read it, where Jesus, if you believer in this person called Jesus, said anything about homosexuality. Or that is, first of all, he created all of us, every single one of us, in his own image. So you mean tell me then that he made some mistakes along the way? That's the reason why I've never had a problem personally dealing with my homosexuality, because I was brought up in the church. My mom taught me and told me about the Bible, about Jesus, and so on and so on. And once I learned for myself, no preacher or man or woman of the faith or the call, or how you want to describe those persons that are trained to be our leaders in the faith can tell me that I'm not living right because you are one of those, you sleep with men, because that's all they can seem to see is the sex part of it. That's all we're about, 24/7 sexual being. We are sexual beings, but 24/7, that's all on our minds, and that's all we do. Nothing else. We don't go to work. We don't involve ourselves in the community. We don't, we just don't live other than, for the sex part. That's it, which is just sick in itself, and it's just ridiculous. I'm saying all that to say that, for me, I learned early that I am somebody, I am loved, I am appreciated, and I just, not going to allow man to tell me, or woman, that, who I am or describe me, or I know who I am. I'm very confident. I'm very self-assured. I am very comfortable with me. You may not be, but I'm comfortable with me. So, we have to agree to disagree. You don't have to like me, but you're going to respect me. I'm not going to allow you to disrespect me. So that's that, so we can't come together, then we agree to disagree and move forward. I can't change your behavior. I can change mine. I can't change yours. So that's where I am in terms of myself, and my faith and my belief. I am, a believer, and I'm not one of those that sort of carry the Bible underneath my arm and want to bang it up, against your head or your face to say, oh, you got to believe this, blah, 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 whatever. I do, for me, it has helped me over the years to deal with a whole lot of issues and concerns and questions and so on and so on. So for me, it works. I know that I would not be where I am today without the belief that I have. I know that Matthew and I would not be in a relationship as healthy and as strong and as comfortable as it is if it were not for me, in terms of my faith and my belief. And just going back a while, to the beginning, when I realized that I was gay and accepted that and said, look, for me, I want to be involved in a relationship. I am not want to be going to the bars every week or every night or whatever the case is. That's not for me. And I just want to be involved in a relationship. So I prayed about it, and I left it alone. I went on about my business. And I found Matthew. We found each other. I had maybe, 2 or 3 little escapades, I refer to them, encounters.
Were these during the service?
None during the service. The one I made reference to after I got out was at this psychiatric hospital that was one of the sort of incident, or experience. And again, I was like 27 at that point in my life, so I'm one of those late bloomers. Because again, I thought that I would end up marrying my sweetheart that I had in high school, and I had gotten to a point where I even ordered a ring for my aunt. My aunt worked in New York at the time for a jeweler, and I contacted her and said, look, Aunt Dorothy, I think I need to go ahead and get this ring. I figured if I got the ring, the rest of the stuff would sort of fall in place. I would feel also, ready to sort of take the plunge and so forth. And the closer I got, and I think she sent me a mock-up, and I looked at it and I said, oh, this is what I said, what on earth are you doing? And I said, I don't know. But I know I'm not going to go through with this thing. So that's when I said, no, this is not it. And then, this occurred, with this young man. And the thing that was, again, part of the learning experience is that it just happened this person was a white guy. And the next day, I thought it was such a wonderful, experience. And so the next morning, I saw him at breakfast, and in the dining area, and I went over to sit, with him and just talk. And he didn't want to know how, what on earth? This, again, it's just a visual. What on earth are you doing here? What do you think we're going to be talking about? And I said, okay, honestly, nothing, And I bid him a good day, and I think went to another table. So I see this is how this works. Now I know now this is not, that can't be for me. So I just be a little bit. But then again, I said, I sort of enjoy what happened, but obviously, And again, I don't know if I had any preconceived notion as to, oh, look, let's pursue anything else. I just thought, at least, maybe this is just a person I, could possibly be a friend while I'm here, but that didn't work. So that's when I really had to sort of say, okay, then I've got to, really think about how I will proceed, and conduct this part of my life in the future, with people that I meet and so forth. So that was that. I didn't beat myself again, my breast and say, oh, won't be. I didn't.
Did you know of Stonewall, or what did you know of Stonewall?
Well, I just knew about it in terms of history and through literature. Of course, having lived in New York and visited some of the the bookstores and all that, and again, it's literature that I knew about it. In fact, saw that area where it all had occurred, but I didn't experience anything like that, but I knew about that, and it's like that's the beginning of, hey, things have got to change here, because all the horrible things that were happening to gay persons prior to that, was just horrific. But yeah, that's I just only know about it through the literature and that kind of thing.
Well, is there anything that you would like to add, just in closing, in general?
Oh, I just, well, as I said earlier, I don't know if I'll be able to see it in my lifetime, but I think some good things are happening in terms of for gay, lesbian, and transgender persons, in terms of acceptance. I mean, it's a slow process, but it's happening, and I'm glad to see that. And I just want to see that we continue to chip at it. Don't let that big boulder say, "Oh my God, there's just no way." Just chip a little of it at a time. We all of us do our part, chipping away at it. We'll soon get rid of it, and it's gonna be a better day for those coming behind us. So, I'm excited about that possibility. Yes.
Then I will conclude on that very nice and positive note. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me stop this one.